Mark, you ready for a chat?
Yeah.
Perfect. So paint a scene for our listeners, like explain the surroundings and why I say it's one of the coolest HQs I've ever visited.
That's very kind. So you've visited us today at our West London headquarters for Charge Cars. We've been here since July last year, just in between lockdowns. We were in East Acton before in a very, very small unit working on the proof of concept car. And since we've been here, we're gearing up for production, basically. We've got XP cars, experimental prototype cars, running at the moment. We have VP cars that are going to be in build in the next month or so, and then pre-production towards the end of the year.
Amazing. And I know I'm not going to go too much into McLaren days, but that's obviously where you've come from. I know a couple of people that work there, and they tend to do 25-year stints. You know, it's a company you can stay at for a long time, and it's a difficult one to leave. But you made that step. I imagine over 25 years, a couple of opportunities were put across your desk. What was it about this one at Charge that was different to the rest and actually made you make the move?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was closer to 30 years. I think it was 29 and a bit at McLaren. I joined McLaren as a startup, or when it was a startup, and I was number 9. So it was a tiny little team of people. We were all multitasking, and I was at Lotus before. There was about 1,200 people at Lotus. So joining McLaren, it was just a lovely opportunity to mix it up with all sorts of different disciplines, people from race cars, endurance racing, Formula One, supercars, and so on, sports cars. But we all kind of spread ourselves quite thinly across all sorts of disciplines, which I really liked, spinning lots of plates on sticks, if you like. And I really enjoyed the buzz of that. And the company grew bigger and bigger. I was, lucky enough to. The reason I wanted to join there was to work on the F1, which was the coolest car ever. But we had no idea how it was going to become the most legendary supercar of all time, which was pretty cool. And then we went on to win Le Mans with that car. A road car winning Le Mans was pretty special as well. And then putting the bigger team together as we grew. And we ended up having a design team with like 40 to 50 people at the time when I left. It was building that team up, getting the right people on board, and working on some extraordinary supercars. It was a lot of fun, with cars like P1, which was another groundbreaking car, and then things like Senna, and then ultimately Elva and Speedtail, and some pretty cool milestone cars. I met the CEO of Charge a couple of summers ago at Festival of Speed. I was only just visiting on a Saturday. Me and my wife were over just to have a wander around the Festival of Speed. We spent some time in the McLaren hospitality bit, had a couple of drinks, which was always nice. And I wandered over, and I'd heard about Charge. I wandered over, and those guys were there I think they were in the supercar area, and Michelin were looking after 2 or 3 cars, were sort of sponsoring them in that area. Mm-hmm. And I went over, met Vadim, and started having a chat with him. We'd already communicated a little bit online, and he showed me around, had a look at the car in the flesh, like for the first time, and the conversation kind of went on from there. And then I went over to Acton to visit the guys at the factory, met a few familiar faces. But in all honesty, when I went into the Acton factory, it had the same spark that McLaren had all those years ago. Startup company, tiny little family team, and it just felt really good. It had a lot of energy, and I think there was nothing wrong at McLaren, but it just got big, and for me, I think I'd kind of been there and done that, and I was loving it, but I just fancied a genuinely a fresh challenge, and meeting the guys at Charge, seeing the one proof of concept car there, looking at the technology and thinking, this is really something quite special, and it just had a nice buzz about it and a real energy. So we had several conversations, and I ended up joining a few months later.
I'm lucky enough to have been to McLaren through the long tunnel and then up through the elevator, and it's one of those places that you go to. I just can't imagine it ever being as small as when you were the ninth, the ninth person there. Like you must have watched like the glass being built. The canteen is like unbelievable there, with all the race cars that they've got out the front, the lake, the the track around the lake where I've seen customers drive their McLarens in, and
it's very different.
I can't believe that you were there when it was nothing like that, I imagine.
But yeah, and you're right. You have to remember, when there was only, like a dozen of us or even 20 of us in the first year or two, we were in a tiny little unit.
Yeah.
We were in Woking. We weren't in East Acton.
Yep.
It was exactly the same. It was 3 or 4, a little bit rough around the edges, workshop garages and so on. But with the Ron Dennis thing going on, we made it look very, very smart and very customer facing. And we did that very quickly. But essentially, there were 2 or 3 workshops with some offices above them. So it was exactly the same kind of vibe. And all those years later, when MTC was built, that was a monumental step change, having a Norman Foster architect designed, iconic building like that put together. It took, I don't know, it must have taken a couple of years to actually go from start to completion. And then MPC, the manufacturing production line as well, it was a huge investment, and it's such a different look and feel. When I joined McLaren, we were a Formula One race team that happened to build a few supercars on the side. That was kind of how it happened. And it's interesting how the balance tipped over the years. That it was always, everything was Formula One. And when Ron used to do his sort of quarterly presentations to the team, we were almost like the amusing anecdote at the end of the news, with the last 5 minutes of like a 2-hour presentation. Yeah. Oh, and automotive have built this new supercar, and they've done this with it, and they've done that with it. Over the years, the balance really tipped, and it became all about road cars, supercars, sports cars, and Formula One was kind of the story on the end. It's really interesting how that whole sort of step change within McLaren.
Going back to Charge, one of the questions I had for you is, who is the perfect customer in your eyes for Charge? Now, aside from those who can afford it, who is the sort of person that should be getting in contact with Charge cars? What should they be enthusiastic about?
That's another difficult one. Clearly, a high net worth character.
Yep.
It's not a cheap car. And I would say somebody with a kind of a rebel spirit, a rebellious kind of spirit. Now, that could be a rebel that wears a suit and works in the city, or is a technology person, or it could be what I like to refer as the rock and roll cowboy kind of rebel. It could be a very different character, but they're people who know their own mind, self-made people who've kind of followed their instinct and made their money that way. I see them as, I think the car always has been a sort of rebel spirit kind of car, but this car more than any now, I think, is because it's ticking all the boxes in terms of zero emissions and technology and all that goes with that, but it's all wrapped up in this super iconic kind of bad boy kind of rebel car, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's somebody that, it's definitely someone that doesn't want to follow the crowd. It's somebody that has, a strong personality and wants something that reflects their personality. That. Exactly.
That makes perfect
sense.
sense.
That's how I see it.
Do you describe it as a supercar?
No. That might be controversial, I don't know. No, I wouldn't. It's, what it is though is I've got old classic Fords and I love them, but I get in them and they don't go around corners very well, and they might go fast in a straight line, but they don't stop very well either, and they haven't got any technology in them. But this is very different. This is, super iconic, very cool, old school car on the outside, but under the skin is where all the magic is, and it may sound cliched, but it genuinely is a new heart and soul under the skin of that car. That's what excites me about it, that it drives more like a supercar. It turns in sharp, it handles, it accelerates like nothing else. It stops really well.
Which is
it's
not like the classics.
It's a cool car to drive. It's
Fantastic.
a cool car to look at.
It is.
But unlike an original one, it drives, it handles, and it does all the things that a modern car does.
Beautiful. And another electric car company out of California, they're slightly larger than they were back then, but they started with changing a Lotus you guys are starting with changing a Ford Mustang.
Mm-hmm.
What's your ambition for the company?
I think always to do niche products, always to do low volume, and we don't want to see, personally, we don't want to see hundreds of these cars on the road.
Mm-hmm.
If I was driving one of these cars, it would be a rarity to see another one coming the other way, but I'd get all excited when I saw one, and you'd probably wave or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's how I like the exclusivity. I like the fact, and I think the customers appreciate that it's a rare car and it's an exclusive car and it feels special. That's the thing I love about it. So I think that should be part of our brand, a rarity and an exclusivity. And I would love us to start, over the years, to start building on the success of this car when we go into production, is to start targeting some other iconic cars that we can do the same, work the same magic on, and end up having a kind of stable of vehicles that that all run on the same Arrival EV hardware, and all of our in-house developed hardware and software, if you like, but super iconic cars on the outside.
I love that. I love the stable of cars as well. I love that idea of all that. I absolutely love that. And final one, what are you targeted on? What are you brought in to do? And what is success for you when the day that you have to look back at your time at Charge Cars, what will success look like?
For me, it was initially so Charge, when I joined, Charge had a proof of concept vehicle. They proved that they could take an old school Mustang, and in fact that was the only Mustang at Charge that we ever got hold of, took the engine out of, and the guys did a complete makeover on it and then put all the shoehorned all the EV hardware into it and made it work. So that ticked the box and said, yes, we can do this. I see part of what my deliverable is to bring in a team of specialists that could take the original body shell that we're making brand new 67 body shells now in steel, but to apply all of the technology to it so that ergonomics were better. Ergonomics in the 60s were like a nice to have. Yeah. They weren't a deliverable. Yeah. Visibility, safety, and things like that. But also we're lightening the car as much as we possibly can, because that improves your performance, your handling, your range. So we're throwing away all the steel panels, resurfacing all of the bodywork except for the shell, and making all of the components in composite. So we're using that kind of supercar logic to that, making carbon fibre and composite panels. So we're saving, I think we're going to save between 100 and 200 kilos in weight on the car, which will make a phenomenal difference to the performance of the car. So things like that, I see as part of my deliverable. Sweetening up all of the lines, because we're resurfacing it to make the composite panels. So at the same time, we're cleaning up the lines and improving the quality. Again, build quality in the 60s was not something to be proud of. Now we are able to align things, get the gap and flush right, and get that sort of level of quality into this vehicle that's not been seen before. So that's particularly exciting as well. Introducing what Lisa's doing with colour and materials. And I think with this car, more than a supercar, colour and materials and the customer journey is one of the biggest things of sort of added value that Charge can deliver, because customers can really indulge themselves with this car. And I don't mean in a money making way as such. I just mean that there's materials and things you can do with supercars, but that aren't, or there's things that are not appropriate in a supercar, materials that wouldn't look right in a car. But with this car, it's much, much more lifestyle, and you can do things, you can really indulge yourself, and we can personalise, customise stuff to whatever the customer wants. So the rock and roll cowboy guy, we can do crazy stuff with it, and yeah, that's particularly exciting when you see some of the materials that we're putting together and some of the things we're offering them. That excites me a lot.
We're going on with Lisa later to talk about the VR experience as well, which she's going to touch on, cool. Which I'm super excited about. But you've mentioned there, last thing I'm going to say is, you mentioned about the safety testing. I've seen what they put cars through with side swiping them. Do you get like special dispensation? I don't want to see one of your vehicles side swiped by like a ton of metal. Have you got to put something through that?
So we're working. They are new vehicles, so they're homologated as small series. and in the US, it's replica law that we work to. But it does mean we have to do minimal crash tests, and we do lots of simulated crash tests as well. But what we're doing for due diligence is the way we've packaged the car, the way we've designed the car. We've got a front crash structure the car never had originally. We've got side supporting bars. We've got safety built into the doors. The doors are all new. They're all new composite as well. So we're doing a lot to give the car as much safety as we possibly can. We have to do one crash test with it, I believe, one or perhaps two. You'd have to check with our...
I'd be covering my eyes
with
for
our
I want to watch
legislation guy. I think it's at least one. It might be two. But yes, we do. We have to go through all of that and show due diligence for the design. So this is much, much safer car than a 67 original car. Like I say, those things they weren't deliverables back in those days, really. They were kind of nice to have.
Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Will, introduce us to the listeners and I guess the viewers. What's your role at Charge, and what's your number one hobby outside of work?
Yeah, so I'm head of purchasing and supply chain. So I head up, everything that comes in from materials to services, etc. Hobbies outside of work. I'm pretty big on cycling these days. Massive passion for music. I say I play the drums. I haven't played in a while, but that's kind of what I grew up doing. So
Nice.
they're my main things, really.
So cool. And how did the opportunity present itself?
Well, I was working at the time for one of Charge's older suppliers. I saw that they're moving to Heathrow and expanding. So it kind of came up via LinkedIn sort of post, and conversation started there with Matas, really, and away we went. Next thing I knew, got the role at Charge, and a year later, still here, and it's going great. So.
Was it here at the HQ that you first saw?
Well, I joined at a funny time. So I joined mid-lockdown. So I had my interview in the old place in Acton. And then, COVID hit. And in that period of time, they were moving to Stockley. And so the first time I met everyone wasn't until about 4 or 5 months into the role. So I spent the first 3-4 months online, not seeing anyone face to face, which was really surreal. But very welcoming. So
quite a nice HQ to turn up to.
It's not bad, yeah.
I'm trying to get this across to people listening and watching this, like how crazy it is here.
In all honesty, it's a different world. It's not like a normal manufacturing centre.
Definitely not.
There's some others out there which are pretty cool, but this takes it for me.
Absolutely. And in terms of location, it says Stockley. For anyone that likes football and VAR, Stockley Park down the road.
Yeah.
It's exactly where we are, just down the road from it. Most exciting thing about the role, Will?
I get to find cool new stuff, new materials, new suppliers, new innovations. So I'm always on the lookout for something that comes up, whether that's technology, which is fed in through engineers, or find it myself, or just finding suppliers of machined items. I mean, that engineering is fun. I love it. So for me to hunt for those bits and components, I get a lot of enjoyment out of that.
So it's very proactive, your role?
Very proactive and very diverse as well. It's not just pigeonholed into one area, so you're just looking at one thing. We're only a small team, so we look after the whole car. So you've got a lot of different avenues which you have to look after and kind of quickly get sort of experience in.
Yeah.
It can be anything from one day you're looking at, like I say, machine components or electronic components, and the next thing you're looking at different levers, horsehairs, cow levers, whatever else, and so it's very diverse.
And one thing I would be scared about if I was in your role with your title on LinkedIn is the amount of messages you probably get. Head of purchasing at a company like Charge.
Yeah.
Did your inbox suddenly change from a couple of messages to every day?
It's always been fairly busy, but it definitely attracts a lot of people, and that's brilliant. I welcome it. Helps me with the search as well.
Do you sift through those messages and approaches?
I think I'm quite proactive, actually.
You're good.
Yeah. Don't like to leave anyone hanging.
Most challenging thing?
Well, at the moment, with everything we've been through, COVID and Brexit, supply. Electronics is slowly becoming a nightmare. You read in the news quite regularly that chip shortages, PCB shortages, connectors, whatever else. We're an electric car company, so we rely heavily on those components. It's probably the major challenge. Then aside from that, making sure things happen on time, pulling everyone together. I need certain inputs to, be able to do my bit. Without that on time, then you kind of struggle. So they're the real challenges, but the biggest one is supply at the moment.
I promised you I'd try not to go off topic, but I am going to now. You mentioned the chips. I've been watching a lot about that and reading a lot about that.
Yeah.
Like, how big is the problem? Because is it literally you're bidding, is it highest bidder at the moment sort of situation, or is there supply, you're just having to wait?
It's varied. It depends on the commodity, on the area. There's elements where you can get it, but there's, large OEs are probably buying in bulk, and they have better power than, someone like us, so they can do that. Other things, you can't buy it for love nor money, because of the, factory shutdowns, whatever else, planning has gone out the window for some companies, and now they want it all at once. So the demand is higher than the actual supply. So everyone's just playing catch up, and you're in a big queue of other customers, other suppliers, and whatever else. So
what's the solution for you to that? Is it literally accepting that that's a problem, or working the way around it?
No, we're quite proactive. So we're engaged with our suppliers daily, trying to plan, trying to come up with solutions. It's not easy, but there's always a route forward.
I'm guessing the partnership with Arrival helps.
Massively, and it's slightly different to a lot of OEs where they're heavily reliant on some of these semiconductors. That hasn't affected us so much, but electronics in general is just a minefield at the moment. But yeah, the Arrival element certainly helps. Again, they've got large leverage scope and a plethora of suppliers to sort of lean on. As a small company, a niche volume manufacturer, you usually find it a bit harder, but with a sort of a sister company like Arrival, definitely helps.
Yeah, I can imagine. What do you look for as a key trait in your suppliers? Obviously, I guess you're targeted on cost savings sometimes, sometimes the quality, or often the quality here. Always. Is there a key trait for you that everyone has to have?
Yeah, quality is paramount. We're selling, it's a luxury vehicle, so you have to meet, stringent requirements. That's fine. Other things, I like to look for difference and innovation. What can you offer me? Value add, value engineered, that sort of thing. So not just here's an off-the-shelf product. What else? What you bring in that's different to someone else. So they're key things. And then support as well. So not just we can give you this product, but we can help you with innovation. We can help you in the future, or help you with development, that sort of.
What gets you out of bed in the morning?
I've always been obsessed by cars, engineering. So to come to a place like this, you've already said how cool the building is. Then there's the product. The Mustang is unique, but it's electric as well. So it's the future. So that that's something in its own, to get excited about. Just a passion for procurement and sourcing. Take a lot of enjoyment out of finding new things, finding new innovations, new products, new suppliers. So I don't know, I feel really fortunate to be where I am. So the lunch is a massive bonus. We can't deny about that. Yeah.
Great.
And again, the company as well. Everyone here is really cool, down to earth, and makes it a lot easier.
It's one thing you notice straight away.
100%,
absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
So, Chris, give our listeners a 30-second overview of your role at Charge.
No problem. So I'm the test and homologation engineer at Charge Cars. So my primary functions are to coordinate and oversee all vehicle and component testing that we conduct here, both ourselves and sort of with suppliers. But also I'm involved with homologation, so that's to ensure that the vehicle is legal and certified for use on public roads.
I was speaking to Mark earlier, and the difficulty of retrofitting a car. Back in the days, it wasn't too much of an issue. You retrofit it, you put it out on the road, but it's not like that now. There's the rules you've got for the original vehicle, I imagine, and the rules you've got for the vehicle you're changing it to. I guess that makes your life a little bit difficult.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but that's what makes it exciting. So, yes, when when the original Mustang was being designed in 1967, some of the things we're now testing it to, or we're going to get it to be doing, never would have crossed those designers' minds. So the vehicle's going to travel a lot faster. It's going to handle in a different way. We're going to make it meet more stringent safety requirements than it was ever designed to do. So it's definitely an interesting one. But if it was easy, then it would be boring. So.
And up to joining Charge, what was your journey on your career?
So vehicle testing and sort of all sorts of interesting testing in the past. So I've always been into cars from day one, always wanted to work with cars. Studied automotive engineering. I've worked with crash and safety testing. I've worked at test tracks doing prototype durability testing. And I've also worked on military projects as well, so armoured vehicles, tactical vehicles, things like that. So basically anything that's interesting where I get to break stuff is what's sort of made me excited, really.
That brings me on to a question I was going to ask you later, but again, I was speaking to Mark about how sad it must be to build a vehicle as beautiful as that, and then as part of safety test, you've got to crash it.
Yeah, so unfortunately, one of our test vehicles, the crash vehicle, will be destroyed. But it serves a very important purpose, and it's always sad to sort of write off a vehicle, but I know that it will help fuel so much learning and also sign off, and also it will give us something tangible and a hard thing to show that our vehicle meets the requirements, rather than a virtual thing. We will have crashed a vehicle into a barrier, and that's difficult to argue with if someone is unsure or doubts it.
You see, for what I do, if I don't turn a microphone on, that's a bit of an issue, but I can record again. If you forget something, I'm not trying to put pressure on, well, I am. You've got to crash another vehicle, right? So it's actually getting things right and in the right place for that is more important than people can imagine. It's not just crashing a vehicle into a thing, is it? Yes,
it's a very it's a test you don't want to do twice. And I've been there before in safety tests as well, where there have been scenarios where you go, something being missed and things like that, and you can't go back again. So there's a lot of planning and preparation. What people don't often see is they see a crash test which takes milliseconds and go, oh, that was fun and that was quick. What they don't see is weeks of preparation of a test vehicle beforehand, and measurements and planning and things like that, and also even post-test you have to download data, review it and everything like that. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
How difficult is it to test a vehicle right now? So there's various stages of testing. If your roll one is the final vehicle, but I imagine you're constantly testing to lead to the next innovation in the car. How difficult is it to constantly change your schedule of testing because you're dealing with prototypes now, as opposed to having a finished vehicle that you can build a test for?
Yeah, so you have to be flexible is the main thing, and you have to be able to sort of change your plans and also get the most out of each test. So ideally what you would have is sort of a fully built up production vehicle, and then you only have to test everything on that once. But that's not how it works in car companies. You go through different iterations where you have early prototypes, later prototypes. You have different systems fitted, and you sort of go through each one. So what we're doing a lot of at the moment is trying to update our test vehicle at the moment with more mature systems. We're updating braking packages, suspension packages, and then we're refining each of those and pinning those down and freezing them, and then moving on to the next thing. So and then you'll always get curveballs where someone goes, oh, have we thought about this, or this new part has come in, can we throw it on? And we'll try and accommodate everyone as best we can, and get out on track and give some good feedback.
With someone as fine on detail as yourself in testing, is there still times when you go, oh, forgot about
that? Every day's always a school day, but my
I love that saying.
My motto is there's no such thing as a bad test. So even if the test doesn't pass or doesn't go how you expected it to do, that's the whole reason why we test. And even if there's an issue of instrumentation, or we go, actually we need to use a different part, there's always something else we can be doing. We'll never waste a day of testing. We can be testing other stuff, we can be doing some additional handling work, there's always something we can be doing.
I was going to ask you to talk us through a typical week, but is there a typical week at Charge at the moment?
No 2 weeks are the same.
Really?
There's always something new and different coming along. we have a plan of testing, but depending on results of certain tests or analyses and things like that, they will change. But a typical week would be, I'd say we look at the status of our test vehicle, work out what's the state of the parts, the level, what kind of updates they need, and we could have hardware updates, we could have software updates. We would plan the tests for the coming week if we're going to track what we're doing with that. Then any instrumentation we need, what kind of manoeuvres do we need, additional cameras, bits and pieces. We will organise logistics to go to a track, perform the test, come back, feed that back to our wider team. Whilst in the background also the dual role, looking at homologation as well. So we've got design reviews with designers and sort of homologation consultants, where we look at systems and go, will that meet a sort of a type approval requirement, and sort of feeding that back in. So there's lots going on always, but it means that it's never dull. I'm never bored in this job.
Perfect. And final question. I hope part of the testing is you getting to get in the vehicle when it's completed and drive around the streets of London.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've already done a lot of track testing. We've done a lot of laboratory testing, and there's still lots and lots more to come. But absolutely, we will be road registering prototypes. We'll be driving them in real life conditions on real roads, because ultimately that's how they'll be used. So that testing will extend to real life scenarios where people will see our test vehicles out on the road.
Now, excuse me for my ignorance, but do you get a stunt driver to go and test a vehicle on the first time on the road, or is it one of the team?
So the first time on the road, it'll be one of us from our team, because we're very familiar with the vehicle. We know how it behaves and handles, and we know what to do in all scenarios. But we do have a resource pool of specially qualified drivers for anything such as high limit handling, which will be on the track in a safe condition, and any sort of extreme manoeuvres. We will have somewhat. We do dwell on. We do depend on other facilities for that.
Andy, what's your biggest career success prior to joining Charge?
Well, I think obviously working at McLaren, I started there on the shop floor and was fortunate enough to get the opportunity on a secondment to move across to the futures team, which was at the time going to be launching the MP412C, or to us it was called P11 at the time. That's all it was known as. So went across to what was the old Formula One building. Like a secret location, I guess. And, we brought the car from XP all the way through to VP, which we did in the technology centre next to Formula One. And during that process, we were also building MPC, so launching the factory. And that was quite the journey to see that go from just an empty building and no production line to kitting out every single general assembly bay with tools, with the equipment, ready for job one, so that when the technicians walked in on that Monday morning when we were due to start, that they walked onto the shop floor into a brand new building with brand new tools, and watching that work go all the way through and its development and what it's become now, to have been at the start of that journey is it was something I'll be very proud of.
I mentioned it to Mark at the start of the podcast. He was there when it was, I think he said, the 9th person there. And when you walk into McLaren HQ, you can't imagine it ever being any smaller than it is now. It's just one of those companies that you can't imagine it not being what it is now. So to be there when they built that must have been, you must go back before you left and thought, Jesus, this is...
Yeah, I mean, even just the original MTC, you go there for an interview, and I'd gone from a completely different environment.
I know you've got a good story here with this one.
Any further from the truth. So I walked in, and it's like walking into NASA. Everything is white, clean. there's no signage like there is now. And went there for my interview, and I got lost. I walked through the wrong door and ended up in the bowels of MTC, trying to find my way back and not wanting to be late for my interview. Because everything is all white and looks the same, you don't know which secret entrance you'd made your way through, but managed to find my way back, and in that process it reveals the entrance to the lift. So you walk into the lift and just these bare white corridors, up the glass elevator, which then opens out to the boulevard, the glass, the lake, the cars. It immediately just strikes you with just in awe of what has come before you, and yeah, obviously being very, very new to this kind of environment, and you hear all these stories and anecdotes of what goes on. I went in, and as I walked in, waiting for my interview, there was a sofa and an upright chair, and I was conscious that that maybe they watched how you behave. So I thought, well, I don't want to look like I slouch, so I won't sit on the comfy sofa. I'll sit on the upright chair, and there was a company magazine strategically placed on the table. So I thought I'll be diligent and have a flick through the company magazine, which turned out to be all hearsay and just old wives' tales. But yeah, I think it just automatically created that aura as you walk into the building, that it's serious. And a lot of people kind of asked me and sort of said, was it a sterile and boring place to work? But to me it wasn't. Yes, you had to be serious, and there were certain ways that you had to conduct yourself, absolutely. But I think that's just part of being in a professional environment. Did we have laugh, jokes, and mess around here and there? Yeah, of course we did, but at the right and appropriate time. So,
a company like that, you've got to have some sort of conduct, otherwise it wouldn't operate. There's too many people there; you wouldn't get things done.
Absolutely, and you're in an environment where there are VIPs, investors, customers.
Yes,
they could just be over your shoulder, and it'd be the one time that you do something or mess about. There's someone there, and they're investing in the brand. They're investing in the quality and the craftsmanship that everyone's there to be part of. So, they don't want the guys that are laughing and larking around and not paying attention to what they're doing. They want the professionals that are building their £250,000 to £2 million supercars.
It's a similar feel here, actually, because at the end of the day, you're here to sell vehicles. The whole place is a shop, isn't it? Essentially, the whole thing is the experience. It's like you go into your Apple store. The whole thing's an experience, right? And everything influences everything here. If you were to come to this room to have your experience with the car, you've got to walk through the entrance. You get to go through the manufacturing floor. So it's a similar feel. It's all part of the experience. It's the same with McLaren.
Absolutely. As soon as the customer walks through the shop door, it's an open forum with very open plan, which I think is good. It creates a nice open space and environment. But with that comes the fact that there's nothing to hide. So we have to behave and conduct ourselves the way that we want our clients to see us.
I like it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but a career that started as an aircraft apprentice, did you ever think when you were walking in that door, did it even come in your mind that eventually you'd be heading up production at a company like Charge at the forefront of electric vehicles?
No, not at all. Not when I'm there covered in oil and jet fuel and doing things like that. No, I mean, I just my early career path was in aviation, which was following on from my grandfather and my father, which kind of like felt like that's the career path that I wanted, the area that I was to go into, and I did it, and I enjoyed it, and just got to know some people working at McLaren, and they were saying, I think you could do stuff in testing perhaps. And you get excited about Formula One and all that kind of thing, and kind of like, well, yeah, maybe there's something there. And unfortunately, with no motorsport experience, I wasn't able to get into F1, but they said, well, they've started building SLRs, some supercars. What about that? So I was like, yeah, okay, that looks pretty cool. So applied, and unfortunately they'd reached their quota. So kind of like got the cursory, thanks very much, we'll keep your CV on file. And, wrote it off and continued with on my aviation career. And then, a year later, just out of the blue, got a phone call to say, was I still interested in joining? So they really do keep your CV on file. It's not just an old wives' tale.
Yeah.
And, went in for my interview, and, the rest is history, as they say.
Beautiful. And Charge itself, that opportunity comes across your desk. After how long at McLaren?
So I was at McLaren for 11 and a half years. I was with the team, the manufacturing team, launching what is now the 720S. And that got signed off with the team that I was with at just before VP stage. And then a few things happened that I decided that it was becoming less and less the McLaren that I knew and loved. So it was time to move on to pastures new, and just happened to get a random text message from a friend that I knew from my hobby, which is powerboat racing, and said, would I like to join their business, which is they make super yacht tenders and limousines for the big super and mega yachts and giga yachts. So went down there and had a look around, and it was, I guess, not a step backwards, but it was much more of a cottage industry, but they wanted to be brought forwards more into like the realms of McLaren, very similar client base, high wealth, high expectation. I'd moved to Southampton, so it cut my journey down. So just took the step outside of my comfort zone and go and do that. And I enjoyed that very much for the last 4.5 years. And then I'd continued to talk to Matt, who's head of electrical here. We obviously know each other from McLaren, and was following Charge through social media and through LinkedIn, and was thinking it was a really cool product, a really cool brand. So I kept sort of niggling at Matt, half tongue in cheek, and any opportunities, and just wasn't the right time. Then we got talking. They were talking to the manufacturing side of things. So said, can I just come for a visit? See what you guys are up to, because I didn't want to. Wasn't too sure what was happening. So he arranged for me to come for a visit, and then I think it was Matt said that they're too busy for people to just come for a jolly, if you like, which is fair enough, absolutely fair enough. If you want to come up, you've got to put your CV in. Yeah. So I was like, okay. So I put my CV in, and then the next day I got a message to say, can I come in for an interview? And then that was it. Had my interviews, and got offered the opportunity.
I love that.
To set up production. So it wasn't like I'd strictly applied for a position. It was I guess manufactured it myself with just talking to Matt and having an introduction, and then that's what started the ball rolling. It's very rare that anything worthwhile is just going to be handed to you in life, and I decided that it was an opportunity that I wanted to create for myself, and the best way to do that is to speak to people and put yourself in the frame, and kind of went from there, really. Was
it a good decision?
Absolutely. How can it not be? A great team of guys, an amazing opportunity to set up something from the ground up. It's daunting, but obviously an amazing challenge.
What's unique about Charge?
I think what's unique about Charge is we're obviously we're obviously a very young team. We're a startup, so there's no strict preconceptions. There's no decades of how you should do something. There's a feeling and an opportunity that, you know, just because that's the way it was done before doesn't mean that's the way that we have to do it now. In some instances, yeah, that through experience, that is the right way to do something. But if no one ever challenged things, then we'd all do the same things all the time. So, and I think it's good that, you know, someone like Vadim in charge, he's not come from a strict car background, so you get a completely different perspective, which allows, you know, different conversations to be had, different opinions, different ideas. You're not set on the same path. And what I think is nice here as well is you can see that the different teams and where people have been picked and chosen from to choose a team are very much allowed to grow and develop their ideas, and you know, everyone's been brought here because of their experience, to come here with the experience and to be told to do it a complete opposite different way goes against the idea of bringing all these experienced people in. So I think
you sound passionate about your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you have to be. You can't come here and not be passionate about what you want to do. You've got to, you know, I've got 499 cars to deliver. Well, we all have, you know. So it's going to take a lot of doing. But yeah, to see the finished product out on the road, to see the customers in the cars, to see, you know, already the positive press that we have out there. It's, you know, it makes you feel good about what you're doing, for sure.
And 499 cars, some people might say, well, don't to be make millions of cars, but it's 499 different cars every time, which makes your life that little bit more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'll always there's going to be obviously set options, and then there'll be bespoke options, and then I've no doubt we'll end up with ultra bespoke options.
Yeah.
But that's part of, you know, what we are on the journey that we want to take the customers on. We want it to feel like it's their own car. They're one of one, not one of 499. And I think that's the journey that we want to take the customers on. That's why, for me, I'm not building a production line. Each car is built in each bay by a team. So anytime a customer wants to come and visit and watch his car being built, it's the same two guys. And for me as well, that gives ownership to those two guys to know that, well, that's the car that I built, not that's the car that I fitted the wheel to. You know, so for me, it gives that much more of an ownership and a desire to make sure it's the best it can possibly be.
Is it taking a leaf out of a rival's micro factory approach, but on an even more micro basis?
Yeah, I think
to
so.
A bay level?
Yeah, I think you need to kind of draw on experiences, and you know, certainly if we were producing 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 cars, then maybe, you know, it wouldn't work as efficiently. Yeah. And we then have to look at, you know, a different way. But for me, the way that we are, you know, we're a small team, we're a small family, you know, producing a small number of cars to these to individuals as their pride and joys. It's certainly the right way forwards.
Perfect. And final question to you, and thanks for your time. What do you look for when you're hiring in your team? Is there a common trait across the type of person? I know skills differ, but is there a common trait?
Yeah, I think, like you say, yeah, skills differ from many different backgrounds. You know, I went from aircraft to automotive, which, you know, some might say is, you know, is that a good transition or not? But I think there's certain elements and things that you pick up
from microns to millimeters.
Yeah, exactly, and things that you look for and bring experience from those different sectors, because they all have different regulations and all that kind of thing. But I think that, you know, passion is one thing. I think that you want someone that's enthusiastic. You know, this isn't going to be a walk in the park. There's going to be late night pizza nights. There's going to be weekends, evenings, you know, sometimes to get these cars out to meet our deadline. So, yeah, I think passion is someone that wants to be here. Someone's got an attention to detail. Someone's got, you know, interest outside of work as well. You know, you want people to have, you know, to have a personality, to, you know, to enjoy things as well as outside of work, which is another good thing. You know, working here, we're all very friendly and everyone gets on. It's obviously not being able to socialise in the last year, as you know, we obviously all hope to in the future. But yeah, I think, yeah, attention to detail, passion.
I guess you don't want to be a cog, whereas you could be a cog in a different place, whereas here, you're here to make a difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, you want someone that's willing to put their experience forwards and ask questions or suggest ideas. You know, I can't say that I know everything about everything. You know, I've been in, you know, one manufacturer, if you like. So to have someone from another manufacturer provide feedback and, you know, and form a hybrid of the two, or a suggestion that maybe we hadn't thought about, I'd always, you know, certainly always encourage that.
Lisa, can you tell us about the design experience that your team's in the process of building for customers? So when they're coming in, the experience that they can get when designing a car?
Yes, so it's actually something we've been working for over a lot of months, and the customer journey starts from the point the customer gets in touch with us to say, I want to purchase a car, and when they put down a deposit, they get these cute little gifts. I'm not going to say exactly what they are, because it's only for the customers at the moment, but we then take them on like a beautiful journey where we ask the customer, do you want to come into our headquarters and develop your car, your spec and everything in our customer room? So this is going to be a very nice and comforting room. It actually doubles up as a colour and material studio. The good thing about it is that the customers can then pick and choose exactly what kind of leathers, non-leathers they want, any bright works and paints. And we also, luckily, we have a full-size model where customers will be able to sit in the model. Everything has been beautifully trimmed, but you can also put on like a VR headset. And with this VR headset, you get one of our visualizers who is dedicated to you on the day. And if there's anything you want bespoke, he will then be able to tweak everything in real time. So we'll have all of the materials, and you can actually see what your car is going to look like before we start producing renders and those kind of things. And I think that gives a really good indication to the customer on how is my future going to look like when I get my perfect car. So this is just one part, and then the customer journey continues, and we have more and more conversations with them to figure out what is your perfect vehicle, and if you want anything bespoke done, what would be your vision of it. So it's definitely when the customers arrive here, and we can also do it externally as well. I think it's going to be,
You can take that experience to them.
Yes, so that is something we're working on at the moment. We've actually tested out doing like an external session where you share your screen. There's also talks about sending over VR headset so that they can like sit in their armchair, put the VR headset on, and whilst we're in a meeting with them, that person can say, do you know what, I want a beautiful oxblood interior, and then we'll just switch on an oxblood interior, and we'll continue that discussion. So,
That's amazing. I think there's a lot of gimmicky VR out there at the moment, playing table tennis.
Oh, yeah.
But that is actually VR being used as it should be.
Yeah.
And especially right now, as a customer, you can sit wherever in the world.
Yeah.
Is the idea.
As long as you have internet.
Good internet
Yes,
connection as
yeah.
well, because lag would be annoying. And what gave you the idea for this?
It has kind of been a bit of a trend in the automotive industry, but it hasn't really reached its full potential. So Mark, the design director, when he first came in here, he's like, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this right, and we're gonna make sure we put the customers in the center, and that the experience is gonna be basically flawless. And so he's been the one who's kind of been pioneering it. And I think it's also, especially with COVID, now that people are spending more time at home, but you don't want to miss out on a very premium service that you would have here physically. So we're also looking at if there's any leathers or non-leather options the customer wants to see. Can we send over physical samples and just get them to touch and feel, and without leaving the comfort of their home.
I like that. And can you tell us more about your experience in your career prior to Charge? What led you to this moment?
It actually started off with premium aviation. So it's been a bit of a strange journey where I've moved from aviation mostly, done high-speed trains, portable hotels, shop interiors and stuff like that. And I then started, kind of made a big shift in my career because I wanted to work in the automotive industry, and started working for Jaguar Land Rover on Land Rover side. That was so much fun.
Which site was it?
Land Rover in Gaydon.
Gaydon, yeah.
Yeah, no, that was lovely. And a while after, I started working for McLaren, so kind of went from full-on mass production to we're only doing a very limited.
And you got to go to McLaren HQ.
Oh,
you
yes,
work,
yeah.
And you went up the elevator that
Yeah.
takes you in the lake. Yeah.
So beautiful.
Was that before Charge?
Yes, it was. And then, moved over to Charge because I have had kind of a very distinct path I want to go on. So, because I'm Scandinavian, we focus a lot on everything being very sustainable, looking towards the future. How can you improve everything around you, nature, etc.? And we have a very big market for electrical vehicles.
Yeah. I'm
just-
certain that Scandinavia led EV and still does EV sales across Europe. Probably not the world, but definitely Europe.
I think it might have.
I'm pretty sure about that. So what are the unique challenges in your role at Charge?
I think it's the fact that when you work in colour and material, you have to rely a lot on data, knowing what your customers are like, which markets you're offering to, etc. But when it comes to Charge cars, everything is new. So you're setting a new standard, not just for what you want to offer, do you want to focus on more sustainable materials? Do you want to do the trend of vegan leathers, etc.? But it's also, you now have not just a challenge, but the opportunity to develop processes, which I love, processes and systems, so that for Project 2 and Project 3, everything is kind of like a well-oiled machine.
Trying to get to that point.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's going quite well at the moment, but we'll see in the future how big are we going to grow to, what's going to change and what's going to happen for the future.
And what gets you excited about working at Charge?
I think it might be the fact that I get to surround myself with really premium materials, and you're just you can do what you want as long as it's logical and it resonates with the customer. And there's just so many beautiful colors I can play with, which is absolutely fantastic.
And you mentioned something about sustainability
Yes.
of the products. How important is that to obviously yourself, but also Charge? There are some materials that just aren't sustainable, but are desired by some people. Is there any line that you draw as a company as to what you'll put into the vehicle in your reach to be as sustainable as possible, or do you have to remain open-minded?
I think at the moment you have to remain open-minded, but we're looking towards how can we improve not just how materials are produced, but supply chains. Like, are you to get this one component, do you have to send it to Germany to be painted and then send it to Italy to add another finish on top of it and stuff like that? And we're also looking at, can we try and keep a lot of suppliers local, so that you don't have to spend a lot of money and a lot of time and just.
It's difficult though, isn't it? Where you are as a company in your journey, a lot of companies grow, become big, achieve their missions, and then go, oh, whoops, we need to think about our footprint.
Exactly.
So there's a balance to strike that's difficult when you're growing, especially companies now. Do we strive to be sustainable as part of our growth?
Yeah.
It's a difficult one. And in design, have you received any out there requests so far?
Yes.
I know you've got to keep an element of secrecy, but there's got to be something you've been like, okay.
There is actually a favorite customer of mine, and he's very much like, he embraces his personality. Like he shows off, but it's he does it so well. And we've had loads of conversations with him. We even invited him over. Actually, in the early days when we were developing all of the colors and materials, and we were having conversations with him as to, so from your point of view, what would you like to see? So he's actually been involved in a lot of the decisions we've made, and it was some of the first sessions we did with him, and we were talking about what's his day-to-day life like, and he mentioned that he had a lot of guitars, like old vintage guitars and stuff like that, and he sent some photos, and I just thought, oh my God, look at that mother of pearl. It was just beautiful inlays, and we actually started speaking to our suppliers on how could we use that beautiful guitar neck and translate that into the middle of the dashboard. So we were researching mother of pearl, different colors, and we also spoke to a jewelry supplier, a British-based one, and they do a lot of precious metals. And so we started working on how can we create patterns, and that was so much fun.
Sounds like you get excited about your role.
Definitely. Best job ever.
Well, hopefully one day I can find out who that is, but I'm sure they want to keep it a secret. Final word. You get the final word of the podcast.
Hey.
Can you summarize Charge Cars in one word?
Oh.
And I should have prepared you for that, I think.
Yes, in one word. Different.
I like it.
Yeah. I think that contains a lot of information, but you can take it as you feel.